If everyone would please take a seat. I will now call to order the meeting of the Omaha Planning Board. The Planning Board members that are here today are Jeff Moore, Patrick Morris, Michael Pate, Jeff Sotolongo, or Jorge Sotolongo, I'll give you a new name. And I am David Rosacker, Vice Chair. Members of the city staff that are in attendance today are Dave Fanslau, Planning Director, Eric England, Assistant Planning Director, Mike Carter, current Planning Manager, Robert Loco, Planning Board Administrator, Jennifer Taylor of the City Law Department, and Lisa Higgins, Recording Secretary. Our rules of procedures are as follows. Notice of this hearing has been published. Copies of today's agenda are located on a table in front of us, as I said moments ago. You are welcome to come down and pick one up. The cases on the consent agenda will be heard first. Consent cases have been recommended for layover. That have been recommended for layover have already been heard or were perceived by the Planning Board to be non-controversial. Therefore, we will read and vote on without the opportunity for your testimony. However, if you do wish to testify, you may have the case removed from the consent agenda. When each consent case is heard, I will ask if anyone wants the case removed. If you do, please stand up and say so, and the case will be removed. The case will then be heard in the order in which it appears on the regular agenda after we go through the consent cases. When the case is heard, you will have the opportunity to come to the podium, and when you do so, clearly state your name and address and give your testimony at that time. When hearing cases on the regular agenda, the board will first hear from the applicant, and after the applicant states their case, we will hear from the proponents, and then we will hear from opponents. After both sides are heard, the public hearing will be closed, and no additional testimony will be permitted unless a board member specifically requests additional information. When at the podium, please clearly state your name, address, and whom you are representing for the record. Your testimony is very important to us. In the interest of time and courtesy to others, please be short and to the point. We will try to limit each case to 10 minutes. Those directly involved in the case, please speak first. We request that large groups select a spokesperson to represent that group, therefore eliminating repetitive testimony. When giving testimony, please provide new information and try not to repeat what has been previously said. We do ask that all speakers and others be treated with courtesy and with respect, and in that regard, please remain silent while seated and turn off your cell phones. Our decision to approve, deny, or continue a case made here today will be forwarded to the City Council for another public hearing and final disposition by the City Council. Conditional use permits are an exception to this rule. The board's decision made here today on conditional use permits are final and are not forwarded to the City Council. Lastly, upon the advice of the Law Department and all communications to the board members from attorneys or other interested parties should be transmitted through the Planning Department so that they are made a part of the public record. The department will then transmit all that information to the board as well as to the rest of the public. A current copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act can be found in a white binder in this room. There is one change to the consent agenda, and that is case number 8, which was on for approval, will be removed from the consent agenda and will be heard in its order. As stated before, the first case we'll hear will be the administrative, I'm sorry?
Read through the consent items.
Okay, that's right. So the consent items, we'll read through those first. The first item in consent agenda is number 9, case number C321200. The applicant is the Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha, and it's on for approval. The request is the approval of the disposition of city-owned property to an interested party. Location is 1502 and 1508 Ohio Street. The next case, number 10. Okay, that's my first time as acting chair. So, is there anybody that would ask to have that removed from the consent agenda? If not, we'll move on. The next case is 10 C3 21201, which is submitted by the Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha, and it's on for approval. The request is the approval of the disposition of city-owned property to an interested party. Location is 2815 Ohio Street. Does anyone want that removed from the consent agenda? So in that, we'll go to 11, case C3 21202, submitted by the Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha. It's on for approval. Request is the approval of the disposition of city-owned property to an interested party. The location is 2878 Miami Street. Does anyone wish to have that removed from consent? Seeing none. Next case, number 12, is case number C3-21-203, submitted by the Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha. It also is on for approval. The request is for the approval of the disposition of city-owned property to an interested party in location 2203 Maple Street and 2706 North 22nd Street. Does anyone wish to have that removed? Seeing none. Next case, number 13, is C3-21-204 and C10-21-205 and C12-21-206, submitted by Falcone Land Development, LLC. It is on for approval, and the request is for the preliminary plat approval of Avante, a subdivision outside city limits with rezoning from AG to DR and R4, along with a waiver of the PDZ present development zone. And the location is northwest of 195th and 4th Streets. Does anyone wish to have that removed? Seeing none. Case number 14, C10-21-207, C12-21-208, submitted by the Players Club Golf, LLC. It is on for approval. The request is the preliminary and final plat approval of Deer Creek replat number 24, a minor plat outside city limits with rezoning from DR and R5 to DR and R5. The location is 7411 and 7417 North 126th Avenue. Does anyone wish to see that removed? Seeing none, the next case on the consent agenda is number 16, case number C10-21-211 and C12-21-212, submitted by Westbury Farms, LLC. That's on for approval. The request is for the preliminary and that must be final plat approval of Westbury Farm replat 2, a subdivision outside city limits with a waiver to section 5384D lot frontage, along with rezoning from R4 to DR and R4. The location is southeast of 218th and Karen Street. Anyone wish to see that removed? Yes, sir. Okay, that one will be removed. Case number 16 will be removed and will be heard in its normal order. The next case for consent is number 17, the case number C10-21-213 and C12-21-214, submitted by Perkins Properties, Inc., and it's on for approval. The request is for the preliminary and final plat approval of Miracle Hills Shopping Center, a minor plat inside the city limits, along with the approval of an ACI 3 PL area of civic importance overlay district. The location is northwest of 114th Street and West Dodge Road. Does anyone wish to see this removed from the consent? Seeing none, move to case number 19, which is C12-21-217. The applicant is MH Ozone 2 LLC. The request is for the preliminary plat approval of Maverick Landing, a subdivision inside city limits. The location is northwest of 72nd and Grover Streets. Anyone wish to see that removed? Seeing none, move to case number 20, which is C10-21-218. Applicant is Sherry Lecce. I hope I have that right. And it is on for approval. The request is for the approval of the ACI 1 PL area of civic importance overlay district. Location is 2515 through 2520 North 24th Street. Anyone wish to see this removed? Seeing none. Next case is 21 C10-21-218. Applicant is Habitat for Humanity of Omaha, and it's on for approval. The request is for the rezoning from R435 to R4. Location is 6334, 6348, and 6352 North 31st Avenue. Anyone wish to see this removed? Seeing none. Case number 22, C10-21-220. Applicants Matthew Kavanaugh, Holy Name Housing Corporation. It's on for approval. The request is for the rezoning from R535 to R5. The location is 2604 to 2608 North 33rd Street. Anyone wish to see this removed? Seeing none. Case number 23 is C10-21-221. The applicant is Thomas Nguyen. The case is on for approval. The request is approval of the MCC Major Commercial Corridor Overlay District. The location is 637 and 639 North Saddle Creek Road. Anyone wish to see this removed? Seeing none. The next case on consent agenda is number 27, C11-20-142, C10-21-230. Applicants Darren Smith for Arch Icon Development. It's on for approval, and the request is for the rezoning from R7 and GI to R7 with approval of a major amendment to the PUD, Planned Unit Development Overlay District. The location is northwest of 16th and Charles Streets. Anyone need to see this removed? Seeing none. Next case is 28. Case number C8-21-178, C8-21-179, C10-21-177. The applicant's Alyssa Garth. It's on for layover. Request is rezoning from R5 and DR to DR along with approval of a special use permit to allow outdoor sports and recreation, outdoor sports and recreation in the DR district and to allow a recreational club in the DR district. The location is south of 206th and Pacific Street. Anyone wishing to see this removed? Seeing none. Case number 21, C8-21-231. The applicant is Grushan McMiller. It's on for layover, and the request is the approval of a special use permit to allow transitional living in the GC district. The location is 701 South 75th Street. Anyone wish to see this removed? Yes. Okay, we will remove case number 21 or 29 from the consent agenda. Next case is 30, C8-21-232. The applicant is Linda Davis Dorsey. It's on for approval. The request is approval of a special use permit to allow small group living disabled in the R4 district within 600 feet of another small group living facility. The location is 5008 North 60th Avenue. Does anyone wish to see this removed? Yes, sir. Okay, number 30 is removed from the consent agenda. Next case is number 32, C8-17-257. The applicant's Kimley Horn. It's on for approval. The request is approval of a major amendment to the large project special use permit in the GI district. And the location is 5701 South 85th Circle, 5639, 5711, 5805, 5810, and 5820 South 86th Circle. Anyone wish to remove this from the consent? Seeing none, move on to case number 33, number C7-21-234. Applicant is X Golf Nebraska LLC, on for approval. The request is approval of a conditional use permit to allow indoor sports and recreation in the CC district. Property is located in an ACI 3PL overlay district. The location is 808 North 102nd Street. Anyone wish to see this case removed? Seeing none, case number 34 is number C7-99-030 and C10-21-224. Applicant Schemmer Associates, on for approval. The request is approval of a major amendment to the conditional use permit to allow religious assembly in the R4 district with approval of the MCC Major Commercial Corridor Overlay District. Location is 14205 Ida Street. Anyone wish to see that one removed? No discussion. We just call for a vote.
Yep.
Okay, do we have a motion on the consent agenda?
Items for approval.
I motion to approve agenda items number 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 17, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 27, 32, 33, and 34.
Second.
Lisa, we have a vote?
Moore,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
motion approved.
And we have a motion for layover?
Move to lay over item 28.
Second.
May we have our vote?
Morris,
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
motion approved.
So,
Probably a reminder for those in those cases.
so anybody that was here for those cases, those have now been dispatched, and we will not deal with them any further today. You're welcome to stay or leave, whichever you wish. So the first case will be administrative meeting only, case number 1 for subdivisions. The case is number C10-13-178 and C12-13-179. The location, or excuse me, the applicant is 192 Harney Holdings LLC, Jack Schrager. The request is final plat approval of the Grove Ridge Lot 4, formerly 192nd and Leavenworth, a subdivision outside city limits with rezoning from AG to R6. The location is southeast of 192nd and Harney Streets. Now this is allied with case number 25, which is not a public hearing, but we will hear that one subsequently after this one. So may we hear from the applicant, please?
Well, is the applicant here for this project, I would ask? Kyle, are you okay if we join the two together and just have one public hearing? So if you could read
Okay.
number 25 as well.
So case number 25, which we'll hear concurrently, is C11, excuse me, -13-177. The applicant is 192 Harney Holdings LLC, Jack Schrager. The request is the approval of major amendment to the PUD, Planned Unit Development Overlay District, in the location southeast of 192nd and Harney Streets. So now may we hear from the applicant. Please give your name and your address, please.
My name is Kyle Hazy with ENA Consulting Group, representing the applicant. Address is 10909 Mill Valley Road, Omaha, Nebraska. The property that we're looking at is on the southeast corner. This is 192nd Street, and this is Harney. To the east, to the west of the property is the Everett Place development. To the north is the future Avenue 1. To the south and to the east is all part of the current Grove Ridge project as well. What we are proposing is a multifamily R6 PUD for the property. It's currently zoned ag. It's two-building, multifamily, with a total of 248 units. They have some covered garage parking underneath, as well as some detached garages and some carports. 190th Street will continue down and connect with the Grove Ridge project. They also have a pool interior to the project with some nice open space as well. Here is some elevations of the proposed buildings. They have a nice mix of materials and colors and more of a flat roof pitch to meet the 35 and under height requirements within the R5 PUD. And with that, I'll make myself available for any questions you may have.
Any other proponents? Okay, any opponents? Seeing none, may we hear from the department?
Yeah, so Kyle gave a nice summary. So we have two agenda items. One is the final plat, just to create the actual lot for this project, and then the other on agenda item 25 is for the major amendment of the PUD. The number of units have always been contemplated going back to the original 2013 approval of the PUD that has several other additional units directly to the south. Overall, there are 522 total units, 248 specifically to this one in the three-story buildings. There is a need for a buffer yard waiver along the north side. Typically from this zoning to the adjacent ag is a 30-foot buffer yard required. However, that is future commercial ground that's contemplated with the Avenue 1 project, and the department is supportive of a reduction of the waiver that will need to go to Zoning Board of Appeals prior to City Council. Parking is compliant. There's just a small revision that will need to provide handicap accessible parking stalls. With that being said, I will read the approvals. We'll take them separately. Please let me know if you have any questions, but I'll read agenda item number 1, which is the final plat. Staff recommends approval of the rezoning from AG to R6. Approval of the final plat subject to submittal of an acceptable final subdivision agreement prior to forwarding to City Council.
Do we have a motion?
I motion for approval of the rezoning from AG to R6 and approval of the final plat subject to submittal of an acceptable final subdivision agreement before forwarding to City Council.
Second.
Lisa, will you record the vote?
Pate,
Yes.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
motion approved.
Regarding agenda item 25, staff recommends approval of the major amendment to the PUD subject to obtaining a buffer yard waiver from the ZBA and submittal of acceptable final PUD plans, providing a minimum 9 accessible stalls prior to City Council.
Thank you. Lisa, will you record? Oh, I'm sorry, motion.
I'll move approval of the major amendment to the PUD Planned Unit Development Overlay District, subject to obtaining a buffer yard waiver from the Zoning Board of Appeals and submittal of an acceptable final PUD plans, providing a minimum of 9 accessible stalls prior to forwarding this request on to City Council.
Second.
Now, Lisa, will you take a vote?
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
motion approved.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you. Now, okay, we'll take number 2. Okay, C3-21-193, Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha. And the request is for the approval of the 2022-2027 CIP, location City of Omaha in the 3-mile extraterritorial jurisdiction. May we hear from the applicant?
Hi, Kevin Carter, City Planner. As you're all aware, the Capital Improvement Program, or CIP, is a 6-year plan that is updated annually, which outlines the city's projects over the next 6 years regarding streets, sewers, parks, and other public facilities. The Planning Department's role in crafting the CIP is to facilitate the process, but it is truly a collaborative process that involves people in almost every city department and in the mayor's office. And the role of the planning board is to make a recommendation as to the conformity of the CIP with the city's master plan. That recommendation is forwarded to city council, and staff finds that the CIP is in conformance with the master plan and recommend approval. I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Any other proponents? Any opponents? May we hear from the city?
Yeah, I don't have much to add, except our long-range planning division does a very good job of coordinating with Kevin Carter that just spoke and Derek Miller, manager of that division, and working with the entire CIP task force and then all the way up to the mayor's priority committee. Recommend approval.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to make a motion to approve the proposed 2022-2027 capital improvement program.
Second.
Lisa, please record a vote.
Moore,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
motion approved.
Case number 3, C3-21-194. Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha requests the approval of the 508 and 1904 TIF redevelopment project plan. The location is 508 South 19th Street and 1904 Farnham Street. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning, 1819 Farnham. This is an affordable housing project located downtown on 2 separate sites, both within about a 2-block range of each other, both very close to the building we're in now. We're here. One building is at 19th and Farnham. The other is down by St. Mary's. This is one of the 2 sites. This is an existing historic building located at the northwest corner of 19th and Farnham. It is a 7-story building that's going to be completely rehabilitated for 54 apartment units. There'll be studio and 1-bedroom units. There'll be some street-level commercial uses and a 1,200 square foot speakeasy type lounge in the basement of the building. The other site, just a little bit south from there, includes both the surface parking lot and the 2-story masonry building next to it. They're all on the same site. The building is presently serving as a parking structure. That building will be demolished, removed, and a new 5-story apartment building with 59 apartment units will be constructed. And there will be about 100 parking stalls in the first 2 levels of the new building, and the apartment units will be on the upper 3 stories. The public improvements involved with these 2 sites combined there's a budget of approximately $112,000 for the public improvements, plus the owner is making a contribution of $35,000 into the downtown public improvement fund. Developer is an LLC that's managed by Neeraj Agarwal. Total project cost is an investment downtown of about $34.6 million. The request is for $2,373,961 in TIF support. I would note that with this building, since it's on the register, there are some design considerations. Here's a elevation of the new building where the other building will be torn down. Going back to the historic building, looks like this presently. It went before the Landmarks Commission recently, and they said any rehab of the building, they should do some work to try to go back to a more traditional appearance for the first floor of the building. That's not included in the plans at present, but the developer is working with the urban design team, and there is some room, I think, for some movement there. But it is a good project. It complies with our city's TIF program requirements. It's an appropriate land use for the area, both projects or both sites, and we ask for your approval.
Thank you, Don. Any other proponents?
Yes, Neeraj Agarwal, the developer, and for the ownership as well. 3814 Farnham Street, Omaha, Nebraska. I'm really just here to highlight this is part of our continued effort to expand affordable housing from really just North Omaha to more core urban areas. We were previously here with the 18 Howard project that'll be right across the street from that Building B, we call it, which is at 18th and St. Mary's, which will be already 120 units, mixed income at commercial space as well. A good infill project. This is part of that focus on more 4% light tech deals that result in utilizing federal funds, so federal tax credits, to help develop these projects. But overall, we're excited. We think it'll be a good repurpose of the office building, which has been in need of rehab for a while, but also the use of that current 18th and St. Mary's site, which is just a garage and underutilized. So overall, very happy about adding affordable housing downtown and hopefully looking to add some more over the next couple of years as well.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Nari. Any other proponents? Any opponents? Seeing none, Mary, who's here from the city, Eric?
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I was just going to highlight, this is the first of 4 TIF cases that all deal with affordable housing today on the agenda, so I think that's pretty exciting and wanted to just point that out. Regarding this case, staff recommends approval.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Lisa, will we take a vote?
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
motion approved.
Okay. Case number 4, C3-21-195. Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha. Request for the approval of the Highlander Phase 4 TIF redevelopment project plan. Location southeast of 30th and Burdette Street. May we hear from the applicant, Don?
Yes, Don Seaton again, City of Omaha Planning Department. And as Mr. England indicated, the TIF projects today involve affordable housing development, so that is exciting. This is the Highlander Phase 4. You're probably familiar with the first phases of the Highlander project. It's on a collection of 5 fairly sizable sites, total of about 4.5 acres among the 5 sites, located southeast of Burdette and North 30th Street. Pretty ambitious, pretty big project. It's a mixed use project, well, mixed use in one building. Total of 20 buildings are involved in the project, and most of it's residential. It's not only affordable housing, but it's also a mixed income housing development, which is also nice that we have a mix of affordable housing with market rate housing. On the larger site to the northwest, we have a 3-level apartment building with some main level first floor commercial space. Total of 49 apartment units in that building. And then the rest of the buildings, I'll go back to an elevation in a moment. The rest of the buildings on the site are kind of like these, basically row homes. Let's go to site plan. These are the other 4 parcels. Duplexes, 3, 4, 5 unit row homes. Here's an elevation of the mixed-use building, the apartment building. In all, there's a total of 108 residential units in this overall development. Of those, 33 will be market rate units. There will be 109 on-site parking stalls and on-street parking as well. Most of the streets in the area, or a lot of the side streets in the area, are presently unimproved. The applicant is asking for $1,480,000 in TIF support. Over $1 million of that will go to improvements in the public right-of-way, public improvements. So there will be some parking in the public right-of-way as well, but that's a substantial portion of their TIF that's going to public improvements. So they're asking for $1,480,000 in TIF support Total project cost is a little more than $32 million. This project meets the required criteria for our TIF program. It's an appropriate land use for the area. We ask for your approval.
Thank you, Don. Do we have any other proponents that wish to speak? Seeing none, any opponents that wish to speak? Seeing none, Eric?
Yeah, I'll just add, if those images look familiar, we recently saw within the past couple of months a PUR amendment and a conditional use permit. So this site is obviously familiar to you as we've gone through many steps. Staff recommends approval.
Do we have a motion?
A motion to approve.
Second.
Lisa, will you take a vote?
Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
motion approved.
Next case, number 5, C3-21-196. Again, Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha. Request for the approval of the 1120 Lofts TIF redevelopment project plan. Location is 1120 North 20th Street. May we hear from the applicant? Don.
Yeah, thank you. Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning. Again, we have an affordable housing TIF development project. This involves a site located at Paul and 20th Street, 1120 North 20th Street to be exact. It's new construction on a vacant parcel. It'll be a 3-story apartment building with 30 rental units. It is a mixed income housing development. 6 of the 30 units will be market rate rentals. There'll be a surface parking lot on the site with about 46 parking stalls. Have some elevations of the building. The applicants have been working well with city staff and our urban design staff team on this as well. The developer is 1120 Lofts LLC, managed by Darren Smith, Mindy Crook, and Dustin Crook. Total project investment in the neighborhood is approximately $6.6 million. They're asking for $485,000 in TIF support. Again, this project meets the required criteria of the city's TIF program. It's an appropriate land use for the area, complies with the city master plan goals. We ask for your approval.
Thank you, Don. Any other proponents? State your name and address, please.
Dustin Crook with Arch Icon, 509 Walker Street, Woodbine, Iowa.
Thank you.
This is a twin to a building that we just recently completed last April on 424 South 24th Street, Garage Lofts, focusing on 3 and 4 bedroom units for families. Rent ranges from $450 to $950, and unit sizes from 1,000 to 1,200 square feet. As mentioned before, 6 market rate units, creating mixed income use. And our building that we brought online in April is currently 100% occupied.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thanks, Dustin.
Any further proponents who wish to speak? Any opponents? Hearing none. Eric?
I don't have anything to add other than staff recommends approval.
Do we have a recommendation?
Motion to approve.
Lisa, record the vote.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
motion approved.
And Chairman, if I could ask that we hear case number 7 next before item 6. My apologies, that probably should have been different order on the agenda.
Okay, so we'll hear case number 6, which is, or excuse me, 7, which is C3-21-198. Again, Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha. The request for his approval of the extremely blighted designation. Location, an area generally bound by Mary and Whitmore Streets to the north, Platt Street to the south, and 38th Street on the east, and 60th Avenue on the west. May we hear from the applicant?
Good afternoon, Bridget Hadley, City Planning. Before you is another extremely blighted area designation. This is the second one of the year. So I'll give you just a refresher on what an extremely blighted area is, and then I'll talk about the study area. So an extremely blighted area or areas are CRAs, community redevelopment areas, or areas that have already been declared substandard and blighted, which meet 2 additional demographic criteria using the most recent census data. And we receive our census data from UNO's Center for Public Affairs Research. One of the criteria is that the census geography has an average poverty rate of 20%, and the other criteria is that the census geography has an average unemployment rate that is at least 200% of the average unemployment rate of the state of Nebraska. The primary benefits of an extremely blighted area designation are centered around housing, affordable housing, and home ownership. As it relates to home ownership, qualified homeowners purchasing a home in an area that has been designated as extremely blighted would be eligible for a state income tax credit. The other benefit, most recently, is a 20-year TIF term versus a 15-year TIF term for TIF projects. So as it relates to the study area, the city received a request from Habitat for Humanity this year to conduct a study to determine if their potential redevelopment site would qualify for an extremely blighted area designation. So what I have on the screen is an attempt to show you how we start the process and then how it evolves. So this yellow-black line represents the boundary of a community redevelopment area. So everything within that is in a community redevelopment area. This cross-hatched blue site is the actual potential redevelopment site for the former Wintergreen apartment site, as well as some additional parcels. So we start out by looking at the site and then what census geography is it in, and what are some of the surrounding census geographies. The considerations are given to areas that have potential for additional home ownership opportunities, affordable housing development. We also look at areas where the city planning department's community development division partners' housing efforts are located. Habitat for Humanity is certainly one of the partners. Holy Name Housing is a partner, and there are others. And they have housing efforts all around Omaha, but a lot of them are concentrated in our areas where we have CRAs. And we also do look at census geographies where there are additional opportunities for community redevelopment, economic development, revitalization. So in this case, we use the 2019 census data estimates, 5-year rather, census data estimates, to start looking at, okay, what census geographies will we pull in? So as I said, we evolve to, here again is the potential redevelopment site. The blue, the purple, and the yellow happen to represent the census geographies that the redevelopment site is in and or adjacent to. So it's mostly in the purple, it's partially in the blue, and adjacent to the yellow. So it only makes sense to consider those census geographies in this analysis and then take it from there. Now what we're ultimately trying to do, I'll jump to this and I'll come back. And ultimately what we're trying to do is get the average, as I had mentioned, to average of the unemployment rate and of the poverty rate to meet what the state law requires. So jumping from this to what is actually in your packet now, which is what we are proposing, the blue areas are the areas that we are proposing to be designated as extremely blighted. And so as I mentioned, the criteria and the considerations we look at, once we figure out what census geographies may work, then we start doing some math. The data we receive, maybe I can zoom in a bit.
Could you pull the mic over to a little bit?
Sure. So what we have this column represents the unemployed population. This column is the population of the civil labor force. So you simply take the, not multiply, you add the populations of each of those census geographies, and then we divide the unemployed population by the civil labor force. That gives us this average. So that's how we get to the average. So as we are looking at the census geographies, we're adding, including some, and then we're having to subtract some, just so that we get to, if you can see this up here, this is that 200% threshold. Whatever the average is, it needs to be at least 6.68 or greater to reach the 200% threshold. So with the geographies that we selected, we reached that. As you can see, we exceeded that. The average of all of those is 7.46 for the unemployment. Same, likewise, for the poverty side. We took the population in poverty and then the population with poverty calculation that we received from UNO and did the same, divided the population in poverty by the population with poverty calculation to arrive at 26.13% as the average unemployment rate of all of those census geographies. So again, it exceeded 20%. We were at the number of census geographies that we needed, and again, how we arrived at those that are in blue. Some may ask, and was asked, why weren't these included? In some cases, the data that is provided, since it's math, the numbers may be too low, and I know that we needed to include these up here, not only because they were adjacent to the project site, but I had been told that, hey, we may have some other projects coming forth in this area, so we wanted to make sure we included those census geographies. And these, the math on these were too low, so these were not included at the time, and so that's why they're not in there. So this is what we arrived at. This is the data that meets the criteria according to law, these two averages, and so here is what we are proposing. And with that, I would ask for your approval.
I have just one question, Bridget. So going back to the data there, so how does the data interpret what is considered poverty?
You know what? That is a more technical question than I can answer. I apologize.
I'm just curious more than anything.
Yeah, I can tell you that, we get the data from UNO, and they are always, they're very, very well skilled and experienced in receiving the census data and knowing what it means. And when I told them what I needed, I gave them what the community development law stated, told them what I needed, then they knew what to provide me.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Bridget, just a quick question, because I know it's fairly new with the extremely blighted designation. The main difference between that and the normal CRA designation is mostly the time frame that you have to pay off the TIF, is that right?
No, so you're talking about the CRA versus the extremely blighted area?
Yeah, or am I thinking about that completely wrong?
Yeah.
Okay.
So first of all, again, when we look at an extremely blighted area designation study, the area has to be within a community redevelopment area. So if I go back to this map, the starting point is the area that we're looking at within a community redevelopment area. So it's a little hard to show because I needed to emphasize certain things, but this boundary here is showing the community hard for you to see, is showing the community redevelopment area boundary. So everything within this boundary is a community redevelopment area. So that's the starting point. Once it's a community redevelopment area, then the next step that we look at is the two additional demographic criteria, seeing does the geographic area exceed the 20% poverty rate, average 20% poverty rate, and the unemployment rate is at least 200% or exceeds the 200% threshold for the Nebraska state unemployment.
But then what's the benefit of why are we designating it that?
So again, the enabling legislation back in 2019, if I misstate something, I'm sure Jennifer will correct me, but it focused on housing. So the whole point back then was designating these extremely blighted areas was to allow for affordable housing development to occur in those areas, and those affordable housing developers could then apply to the Nebraska Affordable Housing Trust Fund and receive special funding privileges. Secondarily was homeownership, to promote homeownership in these areas. And so by promoting homeownership, or the way of promoting homeownership is by allowing those homeowners who purchased a home in those areas as their primary place of residence would then qualify for a state income tax credit. So encouraging homeownership in those areas. So those were the kind of the foundation back in 2019. And then this year, the state legislature approved not extension, but allowing 20 years versus 15 years for TIF projects that have an area that's at least 50% in a declared or designated extremely blighted area. Yes, there is. Yes, but it starts out with, it must be in a CRA first, and then meet those other criterias, and then once it meets that, then these other benefits apply, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, thank you, Bridget. Any other proponents? Any opponents wishing to speak? Sir, you may come up. Give us your name and address, sir, please.
Thank you. I'm Morris Jones, homeowner, 3314 Fontenelle Boulevard. I'm coming to you today representing a newly established Waverly Civic Association and conversations I've had with the Claremont Civic Association, which is centered, these two civic associations are centered along Fontenelle Boulevard. We received notification about this designation and respect the work that has been done to alleviate poverty. However, I ask that the board hold this for further discussions with the current homeowners that are in the area and are adjacent to this proposed change in designation to extremely blighted. The Claremont Civic Association and Waverly Civic Associations are made up of homeowners. And in light of the effort to alleviate poverty, I'd like for the board to consider home ownership efforts, efforts to communicate with the current homeowners in the area, and the last comment is concerns about increase in the population density that such a designation potentially would lead to in the absence of services. As a homeowner, I purchased, my taxes have doubled, so I see no benefit in being in a blighted district, and I see no increase in services, police, municipal services, park district services. So we are concerned, and I think I speak for all of the residents of the Claremont and Waverly Civic Association. We had our national night out last night and discussed this issue. Thank you very much. I respectfully ask that this be held for consideration and communication with the local community. The Claremont Civic Association is one we'd be glad to be present to hear the benefits of this change in designation to the homeowners that are in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Morris.
Thank you, Morris. Any other opponents? I'd like to close the public testimony then. I'd like to ask Bridget to come back and address the issues that Mr. Jones brought up.
Bridget Hadley, City Planning. I guess I would start with, I did mention that we did have a public meeting, and I checked with, representatives of Habitat for Humanity are here, and we use basically the same list, and we did not have anyone show up at our meeting. I don't know if maybe their neighborhood association is new or not, but I would say that in terms of benefits or not benefits, this is just a designation. There is no guarantee that other projects will come forward, even if they've been talked about, brought up to city staff. There's just no guarantee. Even if they do, as a result of this designation, there are many other public hearing opportunities, is what I would say, for Mr. Jones and any others to voice their concerns. Anytime a TIF project is brought before us, or to the city, I should say, we have initial conversations way before an application is presented to us. We always tell them, make sure you reach out to the neighborhood association. So concerns about density, I think could be addressed at that time if the project is able to even move forward. So I guess I would say that, this is simply a designation. This is one particular project where there has been vacancy for decades, and that it is going to, yes, bring density, but I would say it's density that would fit in terms of additional services. We hope that a lot of our projects, TIF projects, do not require additional public services, meaning the addition of officers and fire department staff. And that's because these are urban projects in an urban core where a lot of that infrastructure is either there and maybe needs to be repaired, or you have public services that already exist. So the idea is not necessarily to increase those types of services. I guess the benefit is maybe from a homeowner standpoint, but I think that's an individual question that has to be asked, is that the more neighbors you bring in, the more residents you bring in, particularly homeowners, then that means you have potentially more disposable income to attract more neighborhood businesses and services. And that's a part of revitalizing a community, which is what we do in the planning department, and this tool is designed for that. So I think that's how I would answer that
Hey,
question.
Bridget, have you seen any impact on taxes, for other homeowners when this designation has happened?
I would say for any designation, I have not necessarily seen an impact. I will be honest and say I haven't gone back after we've done a designation to do a full-blown analysis. That would take more staff for me to do that. But the designation alone does not necessarily cause an increase in the valuation of a property. However, once project owners move forward and come forward to say, hey, I have a project, and they move forward and actually construct the project and complete the project, then there could be an increase in valuation, but that could be several years before that valuation actually increases.
Well, and if I could jump in, the areas are currently designated with the CRA, Community Redevelopment Area. These areas are already eligible for TIF projects right now.
Correct. That is true.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bridget. Any other questions from the board? Eric?
Yeah, I would just add, we're willing to sit down with any residents or neighborhood groups and continue those conversations. I do think there's sufficient time between the planning board hearing and city council public hearings. So we're always willing to have those conversations and sit down and, just discuss whether it's the process or the specific parameters about what the state law allows with such a designation. So with that being said, staff would recommend approval.
Do we have a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Lisa, record the vote.
Morris,
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
motion approved.
Okay, as Eric said, we're gonna now take case number 6, and then we'll also do number 18 along with that. First case number 6 would be C3-21-197. And the applicant is the planning board on behalf of the city of Omaha. The request is the approval of Blue Stem Phases 1 and 2 TIF redevelopment project plan. And the location is north of Forest Lawn and Curtis Avenues. I should just read the 18 as well, shouldn't I?
Yes.
Okay, and number 18, which we'll take with this, is C10-21-215, C12-21-216. Applicant is Drew Lear. Request is a preliminary plat approval of Blue Stem Prairie, a subdivision inside city limits with rezoning from R3, R4, and R6 to R5. The location is southeast of 51st Avenue and Mary Streets. May we hear from Bridget again, the applicant?
Good afternoon again, Bridget Hadley. As Eric mentioned earlier, this is the fourth of 4 affordable housing TIP projects.
Thank you.
Sure. And I think a lot of us are excited to see this site be redeveloped. So again, as you read, here are the boundaries of the site. To the north, Mary Plaza. To the south, Curtis Avenue. Furthest east is North 50th Plaza, approximately. Furthest west is North 51st Court, maybe even to North 51st Street. Again, this is the former Wintergreen Apartments site that was formerly owned by the city, and that site has transferred hands now to the development team of the Habitat for Humanity developer team. And then these are some parcels that were subsequently purchased by the development team or entity for Habitat for Humanity. And they were purchased from private developers or private homeowners and owners of property. This represents phase 1, and then this represents phase 2. This is just another view of that, but I'll leave this one up. So this particular Blue Stem Phases 1 and 2 represents a planned multi-generational single-family housing redevelopment project. The total site is about 17 acres, and again, we'll redevelop both the Phase 1 and 2 that you see before you. There will be a total of 87 single-family detached homes in this particular area. And it is an area I'm somewhat familiar with, so in that particular area, you have single-family homes, primarily, I would say probably 99% single-family homes. So the land use is absolutely appropriate. In the first phase, it will be comprised of 15 single-family homes, and then in the second phase, will be comprised of 72 single-family homes. And as you can see the site, you can appreciate there will be lots of public infrastructure improvements and reconfiguration of the site to add in a street grid for the single-family homes, sewer work, water lines, storm and sanitary sewer work, utilities that will be needing to be reconfigured. There's a water drainage site there. So lots of site development and public infrastructure improvements will be made as a result of this particular project. And a significant portion of the TIF eligible expenses are going to site development and public infrastructure improvement. The rezoning that will take place is a rezoning from R4 and R6 to R5. And then there is an amendment to the future land use element to low-density residential. I think I mentioned all the public improvements. The total amount of the TIF is a little over 3.4 million, and the total investment of this project is a little over 21.5 million for both phases. And I think I've touched on mostly everything. I do have some I did ask the development team to send me some pictures, so I want to make sure I share the elevations. This is a layout, whoops, of the site, some green spaces, planned green space and open wetlands. There will be some mitigation. I believe I had in my notes that a wetland and tree canopy analysis will be required, and all drainage ways must be encapsulated within outlets that adequately are sized. Then there's also, this is what the site currently looks like. Don't know if you can kind of see, lots of vacancy. This is the road that is leading Forest Lawn Avenue Road that's leading into the site. Some more current views of the site. And then views of the elevations. So lots of different housing styles, roof lines that are a little different than what we may have seen in the past in some of our areas. And as I said, multi-generational, so for families, empty nesters, and even for seniors. There will be some ADUs, accessory dwelling units, I believe that's what it's called, that will be a part of some of these homes. And then I asked for an elevation of ranch style so that we could see what that might look like for the ranch style home. So that is all I have, and I will ask for your approval.
Okay, thank you, Bridget. Do we have anyone else from, I guess, Habitat that would come up and talk about either part of the TIF or number 18?
Drew Lear, Habitat for Humanity, Omaha, 1701 North 24th Street. Just wanted to speak briefly about our replat, the preliminary plat approval. As you see on the drawing here, if I can line this up. Wintergreen is the larger tract of land. We did acquire the properties on Vernon Circle. There are a few that we'd like to replat because of location of corner. It's a replat of a total of 72 lots. That's really all I have to add. We're excited to get going. We seek your approval.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions for me? Good.
Any other proponents who'd like to speak? Okay. How about any opponents? Anyone wish to speak in opposition? Seeing none, then Eric, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, so I'll touch on agenda item 18, which is the preliminary plat and the rezoning, just briefly. Site's a little over 17 acres, so the actual platting portion, as Drew mentioned, is a little bit smaller than the items for the TIF, because some of those southern lots are already appropriately platted and zoned. You know, this is a great redevelopment for this area. There have been a lot of neighbor concerned of just what was formerly there with the Wintergreen Apartments. And, you know, I heard as a young planner when I attended neighborhood meetings in this area that there was, you know, not a desire for any future multifamily in this area. So I think the proposed single-family residential will be a great fit into the existing neighborhood and really what the surrounding property owners would appreciate. You know, there's several existing street stubs or right-of-way stubs that have not been connected into the site. We're doing a good job of providing connections from the surrounding neighborhoods. So I think that's going to be a benefit for all parties in this area. I don't really have anything too much to add as far as the specific conditions. So I would recommend approval of agenda item 6, and then I would read 18 shortly after.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Do we have a motion on number 6?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Lisa, would you record the vote, please?
Moore,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
motion approved.
Okay, we'll take your recommendation on 18.
Yeah, so for 18, staff recommends approval of the rezoning from R3, R4, and R6 to R5. Approval of the preliminary plat subject to the 15 conditions in the recommendation report.
Do we have a motion?
A motion for approval of the rezoning from R3, R4, and R6 to R5, and approval of the preliminary plat subject to the 15 conditions in the recommendation report.
Second.
Thank you. Lisa, would you record the vote, please?
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Okay, case number 8, C321-199, Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha. It's on for approval. The request is the approval of the disposition of the city-owned property under community development law. And now bear with me with all these addresses. I hope I don't make a mistake. 3209 and 3213 North 24th Street, 2620 and 5310 North 25th Street, 3511, 4115, and 5317 North 26th Street, 5343 North 27th Avenue, 5802 and 5810 North 27th Street, 3502, 3519, and 5835 North 28th Avenue, 2732 Brown Street, 2408 Camden Avenue, 2747 Crown Point Avenue, 2116 Emmett Street, 6416 Forest Lawn Avenue, 2115 and 2117 Grant Street, 2529 Miami Street, 2519, 2520, and 2523 Ohio Street, 2622 and 3029 Pinckney Street, 2510 Sprague Street, 2220 Spencer Street, 2621 and 2623 Wirt Street. May we hear from the applicant? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Autumn Evans, City Planning Department. Thank you for reading all the addresses. I will not repeat those. I do have we have a couple maps here, but the area for these 30 properties are all north of Burdette Street. Majority of them are, I haven't used this thing in a while, so there we go. Okay. This map kind of shows it a little bit better than the one with the aerial since there's so many of them. So we have Burdette Street on the south, south of Miller Park, west of Florence, east of Creighton Boulevard. And then we have one property that's just south of Wintergreen site, which was just discussed. And all of these have been requested by Habitat for Humanity for the construction of single-family affordable housing. There is 174,815 square feet. All of them are zoned residential. There is one property that a neighbor requested to acquire, and Habitat has withdrawn their interest in that property, and that one is shown here, 2116 Emmett Street. The church to the east has shown interest in this parcel here. And so that one will be not going to Habitat for Humanity, but we would like to continue with the approval of this one for the disposition, which that one would be sold to an interested party for appraised value. And the other 29 parcels would be sold to Habitat for Humanity for $1 under community development law as an effort to expand more affordable housing. And staff recommends approval, and I'm here for any questions, and Habitat is also here as well if you have any specific questions for them.
Thanks, Autumn.
Thanks.
Any other proponents speak? If not, any opponents?
Come on down.
My name is Rachel Harwood, and I'm a property owner next to 2732 Brown Street. My husband didn't get his written thing in time, so he would actually like to see if he could purchase the land next to it from whomever. So I don't know how I do that, or, sorry.
Autumn will connect with you on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other proponents or opponents? Seeing none?
Yeah, so I guess I would just add that, this is kind of the first step in declaring these properties, eligible for disposal from city-owned land. Obviously, Autumn discussed the 2116 Emmett Street, so, that will not proceed to city council with the other package, to the Habitat for Humanity. And if an agreement comes to the adjacent property, there's, that can go separately to city council. The same thing regarding this Brown Street property. I guess we'll have to look into it, and Autumn can coordinate with Rachel and see if that's a potential. We can't make any guarantees at this time, but with that being said, staff recommends approval.
Thank you. Do we have a recommendation?
Move to approve.
Second.
Lisa, record the vote, please.
Pate,
Yes.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
motion approved.
Okay, we'll take case number 9, C3-21.
We've done that. Consent.
What?
Consent, that was already 15.
Oh, I'm sorry.
15 and 31.
My mistake. Okay, we'll take case number 15. C10-21-209, C12-21-210. Applicants Westwood Solutions LLC. The request is for the preliminary plat approval of state and Highway 133 addition, a subdivision outside city limits with rezoning from AG to GI. Location is northwest of Blair High Road and State Street. We will also take case number 31 at the same time, as they are the same parcel. And that case is C8-C21-233, Westwood Solutions LLC. Request approval of a large project special use permit to allow communication services in the GI district. Location northwest of Blair High Road and State Street. May we hear from the applicant?
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Norman. I'm the representing the client on behalf of the Greater Omaha Chamber. Address 808 Conagra Drive, Suite 400, Omaha, Nebraska. So this is a prospective data center project that is looking at the property. It will be owner operated by the end user. So they will be developing the site as their market demands indicate how they need to build that out. So it'll be a phased development project, but there'll be potential for growth over time as the development continues. And just really here to answer any questions you may have. It's a good project. We've been working with the Kevin Anderson with the mayor's office very closely on this project, as well as with city planning and public works. So we think everything is moving along nicely. We've got a critical timeline, so I'd like to try to get these approvals in place. So knock on wood, if everything moves forward, we can start the project as soon as possible. So we have Mike Miller here from HDR to answer any technical questions that you may have, but again, would happy to answer any questions and ask for your approval.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. Any other proponents who would wish to speak?
Good afternoon. Kevin Anderson, City of Omaha Mayor's Office, here in support and make myself available for any questions.
Thank you, Kevin. Any other proponents? Are there any opponents which to speak about this? Either case? Seeing none. Eric, would you like to?
Yeah, so case agenda item 15 is specifically the preliminary plat and the rezoning from AG to GI. It's a very large site, over 260 acres. The future land use map of the master plan designates this area for industrial, so the rezoning to GI is appropriate. The use type is classified as communication services, which is permitted in GI zoning. However, the zoning code also classifies that use type as a commercial use type, and the regulations within the GI district require when a commercial use type is approved or proposed for a GI zoned property over 10 acres in size, a large project special use permit is required. So that's the reasoning for agenda item 31. Even though it's a permitted use, it's that large project special use permit. So a very large site, has Thomas Creek running along the eastern portion, dividing the site with Blair High Road. With Blair High Road, there would have been limited access points with any development, and then especially with Thomas Creek, we probably only would have received one access connection to Blair High Road to the subject site. However, with the large one subject property, Public Works and Planning have worked with the development team extensively on both street connections, potential sewer infrastructure that'll be needed for this project, and we are satisfied with what is being proposed with the preliminary plat. Specifically for the large project special use permit, we will continue to coordinate on finalize site and landscape plans with the development team. Mark had mentioned time sensitivity. We do anticipate the first phase final plat to come back fairly quickly to this board. So unless you have any specific questions for the development team or for city staff, we do have Public Works here in addition to myself representing planning. I will read the recommendation for number 15, but if you do have questions, let us know. For agenda item 15, get to it here. Staff recommends approval of the rezoning from AG to GI, approval of the preliminary plat subject to the 31 conditions in the recommendation report.
I move approval of the rezoning from AG to GI and approval of the preliminary plat subject to the 31 conditions outlined in the report.
Second. Lisa, would you record the vote, please?
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion
Eric,
approved.
you want to do the next one?
Yeah, for agenda item 31, staff recommends approval of the large project special use permit to allow communication services in the GI district, subject to the 9 conditions in the report.
Do we have a motion?
Pull it up here.
Motion for the approval of a large project special use permit to allow communication services in the GI district, subject to the following 9 conditions. I recommend.
Lisa, please record the vote.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Okay, case number 16, C10-21-211, C12-21-212. Applicants Westbury Farm LLC. The request is preliminary and final plat approval of Westbury Farm Replat 2, a subdivision outside city limits with a waiver to section 5384D lot frontage, along with rezoning from R4 to DR and R4. Location is southeast of 218th and Karen Streets. May we please hear from the applicant?
Good afternoon, John Bachman, 10250 Regency Circle on behalf of the applicant. This application is twofold. One is to permit a very small replat of an existing outlot to accommodate a septic sewer for the adjoining lot, Lot 257. Otherwise, Lot 257 does not have the available perk tests to permit a septic sewer. And secondly, as a result of the replat, that small portion, which is identified as DR, needs to match up with the existing platting and zoning for Lot 257. That's the extent of our request and application. Planning staff has requested approval. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Any other proponents that wish to speak? Any opponents? Please give your name and address, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Lance Houston, and I live at 21763 K Street. My property adjoins on the photo. It's the single house here. There's others built in there, but honestly, I'm not going to say I'm an opponent, but I'm looking more for clarification on what can be done with that outlot if it is replatted. Just as an example, I took this picture this morning, and this is looking right off my back deck. And my concern is what's going to happen to this area once it's replatted. Again, I'm not opposing to the letter of the law. I'm just looking for clarification on what can be done after that would be replatted. I did serve on a planning and zoning commission in a previous time, and I understand the intent and the desire for property owner relief. And again, I am supportive of this. I would just like clarification on what can be done on that lot once it's replotted in terms of building, fencing, et cetera. So with that, I'll either take questions or I'll step away from the mic.
Thank you, Lance.
Thank you.
John, would you like to come up and address that?
Our intentions, John Bachman, 10250 Regency Circle, our intentions are to do minimal site work on the lot other than to accommodate the silt basin, or not silt basin, the septic sewer that will need to be put in there. Otherwise, it's going to remain the same and look the same.
Thank you, John.
Other than what we need to do for the septic sewer, it's going to stay the same. And if we need to put any type of restrictions on the lot subject to city planning approval, we'll be glad to do that.
So, John, it looked like there were some improvements on that parcel with trees and things like that. Will those be impacted at all by that?
I'm not an engineer, but we will, if trees are impacted, they will be replaced and outside of the septic sewer area.
And then I guess another question for me is just on, that will then become a part of his property, so he'll maintain it, you know, the mowing the grass or whatever the case may be. So.
We're going to restrict it as much as we can to keep it looking the same way that it is. So I would anticipate that there will be some type of restrictions put on that as far as maintenance, but yes, he would have some responsibility for maintenance of that.
Okay, so you can, after this meeting, you can meet with Lance and
Sure.
answer any other questions that he has. So.
Yeah, we'll be glad to do that.
Thank you, John.
Great.
Okay, and any other opponents? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Eric?
Yeah, so I would just like to add, so this is kind of a divide, and this is the part over the ridge, basically, with Lance's neighborhood, and his property has sanitary sewer, your typical development, but the properties to the west, because of gravity flow and the drainage of those lots, those are required to have septic systems. And so when they were doing the percolation tests on the ground, they basically they needed this a little bit of additional room, and it was determined that that area was not necessary for the stormwater facility that is currently in place in that outlot. So there will be restrictions, and basically the homeowner's septic system will be underground. You wouldn't want to build structures over that anyway. So there's going to be limitations just by the nature of what's going under the ground. So unless you have any further questions, staff recommends approval of the rezoning from R4 to DR and R4. Approval of the waiver to section 5384D lot frontage. Approval of the preliminary plat subject to providing for the use, ownership, and maintenance of the outlots in the subdivision agreement, including that outlot B shall have a septic sewer easement to the benefit of lot 257 Westbury Farm. And approval of the final plat subject to the conditions of preliminary plat and submittal of an acceptable final subdivision agreement prior to city council.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I motion for approval of the rezoning from R4 to DR and R4, approval of a waiver to section 5384D lot frontage, approval of the preliminary plat subject to providing for the use, ownership, and maintenance of the outlots in the subdivision agreement, including that outlot B shall have a septic sewer easement to the benefit of lot 257 Westbury Farm, and approval of the final plat subject to the conditions of the preliminary plat and submittal of an acceptable final subdivision agreement before forwarding a request to city council.
Second.
Lisa, will you please record the vote?
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Okay, let me make sure I'm on the right one here. I think we're on 24. Case number 24, C10-21-223. Michael Malley Real Estate LLC is the applicant. Request is for the rezoning from R5 to TOD3 MNR, and the location is 201 South 71st Street. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Thank you, Mr. Rosecker. Brent Beller, 1140 West Center Road, on behalf of the applicant, Michael Malley Real Estate. With me today is Mr. Malley, in case you have any questions. Before you today is a rezoning of a piece of property just basically at 201 South 71st, so just off the corner of 72nd and Dodge. This is the parcel. To the north, obviously, is Fuddruckers, and there's a couple commercial units there. There's a Scooters, and then to the west is a commercial center, a retail center with Barrett, GameStop, another one, and then of course Chipotle. If you're like me, I'm there 3 times a week, but that's my own problem. So with that, this parcel is just about 0.27 acres. As long as we can tell, it's been vacant probably since the late 70s, early 80s. So it was interesting to hear Bridget earlier when she was talking about the CRA and empty lots and how we do this. When we do infill development, there's a lot of these lots still left in the city of Omaha. This one in particular is not in a CRA. We're not asking for TIF. This is a straight rezoning. And so it's currently zoned R5. R5, as you all know, is a transitional. It's an urban area where it's zoned to allow for a buffer between traditionally single family and commercial uses going on. So for whatever reason, we don't know, and maybe Eric or someone knows why it was zoned R5 or the history of that. But in any event, we're taking advantage of the TOD with the MNR overlay zoning designation. So with that, what we're proposing, and here is the actual site plan, is 4 market rate condominium townhomes. So townhomes, whether you're in the R5 or the TOD, is a permitted use here. But these will be 4 commercial rate townhomes. They, because we have the TOD, we have a number of standards that we have to comply with. That being, the entries have to be more front loaded, have an area there for folks to gather. Our garages have to be in the rear. So just to give a little orientation, this is north, Fuddruckers, Chipotle. So all of our traffic will come off of 71st. As far as compliance with TOD, we're not asking for any waivers as it applies to TOD. Every facet of this project complies with all your setbacks, your height, your impervious coverage, your parking. So, it's from a zoning standard, it's not all that complicated. We had a neighborhood meeting and we met with a number of residents, and we're actually pretty impressed and appreciated the amount of folks that came out on Monday at our neighborhood meeting, which we had at Fuddruckers. A lot of good questions. A lot of folks had questions as to why it was zoned R5 and why we're rezoning it for TOD. And the one thing I did want to highlight, because at the time I didn't know the answer to this, but I had a question of what are the differences between R5 and TOD as far as this particular project? And if we had stayed with R5, we could still do townhomes, but we would have, our height would have been, I think it's 35. Our setbacks in the back would have been 25. and then I think our impervious coverage would have been 60, and we're at 74. So the TOD does allow us some additional setbacks, impervious coverage, that sort of thing when we go to that. So I did want to clarify that because I didn't know the answer at that meeting. But otherwise, we're pretty excited about this project. It's nice to do this infill. As you all know, TOD wants density. We want infill. We want lots like this to be developed. And frankly, from our standpoint, keeping it residential versus all the civic and other uses that could take place on an R5, we thought was a good buffer, a transition between the traditional single-family homes and what the commercial uses going to the west and the north. The other thing that folks asked for at that meeting was they asked for colored elevations of the project. So Mr. Malley does pretty high standards on all of his products. So these would go as we sit today, and as you all know, the price of construction is fluctuating on a daily basis. But we think these will be about $600,000 a piece. You're going to get 2,500 to 2,700 square feet in each of these, 2-car garages. This is actually the front elevation. So if you're on Douglas Street looking south, 3 levels, 41 feet in height.
Brian, could you zoom out a little bit and on the screen? That'd be up top. Thank you. That'll bring it into focus too.
I
Perfect.
thought there
Thank
was
you.
a wizard that used to do that for us there, but apparently not. So on the 3rd level, though, will be a balcony that overlooks the front. And then on the top level is sort of a loft space, about 400 square feet up there. Because these won't have basements, we kind of reversed how folks will live in these, and your top floor will be your basement living area. This is looking towards the southeast, so this is the front of the building. Again, looking southeast, this would be 71st Street over here. This would be Douglas right here.
So that's the drive right there from 71st Street.
This would be that's right. This would be the drive. And let me specify. So on our elevations that we gave the residents and we submitted to the city, we had depicted or described what all the elements would be. We just didn't color them in. So I think it helps folks to see, the colored brick, the type of wood that we're going to be using, pretty high amenities for these particular townhomes. And this is the rear. So this is looking northeast or basically east. So driveway, parking garage. There is a 2nd level balcony that's just on the 2nd level. We didn't want to have any balconies up here, just to be mindful of our neighbors to the west because it is a residential neighborhood. We know we want to respect their privacy. I'm back there. And then this is looking to the northwest. Again, the garage is on the back. This is the east facade of the building. This is looking west towards Chipotle. Fuddruckers is over here. And then this is the back. This is looking straight north. Obviously with TOD, our heightened design guidelines, our landscaping, our sidewalks, all of that gets high level of scrutiny with the city. We will continue to work with Jed. I know he has to review these plans, and I think as part of your conditional approval, we need to continue those conversations. But as far as the layout and what we want to do, this is what we're proposing. It's also important to note that there are a number of, and this is probably the best depiction, there are a number of really large, I'd call them probably 100-foot trees back along the south border, which provide a good buffer for the owner of this lot and where our lot would be. And also I know, and I met him, the gentleman who owns this house, he has extensive landscaping on both sides. Our goal is to kind of mirror that. It looks really good on his lot. We want to do the same. So obviously we'll have a lot of landscaping on that east side and then also on the south side as well. So with that, we're here for your questions and any response to any questions. And of course, this comes with the department's recommendation for approval. So we're here to help.
Brent, I just have just a quick question for you. So on the maintenance of these, is there going to be a company or a management company that's going to maintain all of the property?
Yes, so these will actually be condominiumized. So
Okay.
as part of that, there'll be an association that all the owners pay a due. We'll hire a management company to hire all the snow removal, all the lawn care, landscaping, all that sort of annual stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Was there any opposition that you heard from the neighbors during the meeting?
I don't want to speak for them. I'll let them come up. I thought it was a positive meeting. I'll say this. There are a lot of folks that came up to us after the meeting and said, we came here to oppose your project and we're actually in favor of it now. So I don't know that we have any opposition, but we get it. A site like this has sat vacant for 30 plus years, 40 years. So change is always a little bit, I'm not going to say difficult, but it's certainly, you want to have a conversation, make sure you know and know what's going on. So we hope that we have been upfront, and we want to share these elevations with the owners and the residents, just so they have it too, and so there's no questions. I think more than anything else, what we heard is we want to make sure that we're not changing something. We're not going to bring in a commercial use, a more intense use. Parking and traffic is already an issue for the homeowners around this neighborhood. We don't want to add to that problem.
Thank you, Brett. Any other proponents that would wish to speak? No more proponents. And any opponents that would wish to speak? Please give your name and address, please.
Hope I got this right. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody hear me? Yes. Okay. My name is Alice Dworzak. I live at 222 South 70th Avenue. It's in the Elmwood Park neighborhood. I guess I'm representing myself. My two-story home is located very close to this property. I do not share a common border with the property. However, the height of this construction, it's a 4-unit condominiums, is 41.5 feet. And it will definitely affect my view as it looms over my house and my two neighbors. The homeowners' houses are 2-story. They're not 4-story. To begin, I'd like to point out that this rezoning runs contrary to the intent of the city's own master plan. To be specific, the Omaha master plan has several items that deserve to be highlighted. I'll be very short. I have like 5 quotations and examples. If you go to the master plan, under the chapter called Housing Elements, page 6, goals of the master plan. And I quote, one of the goals is to prevent negative changes to neighborhood character, slip-ins, conversions, spot zoning. This is one individual lot. There's actually 4 of us. I'm sorry, I didn't know that we had visual aids, so I don't have a picture. But if you remember his picture, there are 4 lots, like it's a little island. Oh, great, good. In that case, this is me. This is my house, and this is the new construction. Thank you. Under the master plan, the heading is Creation and Preservation of Healthy Neighborhoods, page 17. Quote, new development should be consistent with the character of older neighborhoods, except in areas designated for extensive redevelopment. This is redevelopment on those 4 little lots that are positioned together. Again, in the master plan, the heading is Compatibility with Surrounding Neighborhoods, page 24. Quote, zoning can help encourage compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood by assuring land uses are compatible and housing density is similar. In this case, the density is not similar. The lots around it are single-family homes. This would be 4 townhouses, each with 3 bedrooms. The text goes on to say, quote, maintaining the form and scale of the structure in the surrounding neighborhood in the new design contributes to a sense of fit within the neighborhood. The operative words being sense of fit within the neighborhood. Again, it is a 4-unit, 4-story, 41.5 feet tall condo structure, and it simply doesn't fit the neighborhood. In the planning book, under section entitled Urban Design Element Subsection Policies, page 52, quote, the city shall encourage the construction of infill development. I believe that's what was referred to. That is in scale with the existing neighborhood. The operative word being in scale. Again, 4 stories versus 2-story houses that's surrounding it. In short, based on the quotes, rezoning of the property runs contrary to the intent of the master plan. I also had a few questions that came up at the Monday night meeting. It had to do with the landscaping, and I hope I do this right. On the original zoning application, I don't know, I go down, I think, or up. I guess that's about the best I can do. This was the page attached to the zoning application, and it shows the trees. If you look on the borders, I am lot number 4, as I showed you on the previous diagram. On one neighbor's side, you can see all those circles. Those are all trees, and they're like deciduous trees. And on the other side, to my neighbor's property, again, you're looking at the circles. The circles are trees. This document was attached to the application. However, when we went to the Monday night meeting, this is the document that I obtained. It wasn't given out to everybody. I asked the questions, so they gave me a copy of it. In this case, those are all little trees. You can see around the borders. Some are big and some are small. The way it's interpreted, based on the legend, it shows 1 fir tree and 2 deciduous trees on the east border, and 2 fir and 2 deciduous trees on the south border. The only new trees are the ones on the north and the west. Is that right?
I don't know.
Okay. That looks like the only new trees. The owner stated that there would be remaining some green screening, minus they would take out the weed trees, small weed trees, and some weeds. But based on their diagram and the previous diagram, I do not understand. I've always understood the part where when you produce a document and you deliver it to the city, it has to be built or reflect what it's going to look like when it's completed. If this is what it looks like when it's completed, there sure are very few trees based on the diagram I showed you before, where they've got lots and lots of trees. I'd just like some clarification on what the landscaping will look like when it's built. And in closing, I was out of town the week of the July 19th, and I had the post office hold my mail. I'm sure you've done that before. Well, I didn't get my mail until July the 24th. So I only had 10 days to kind of put this together. Therefore, I would like to respectfully request that the case be held over to allow sufficient time for myself and the neighborhood to review some of these documents and clarify, if possible in writing, what the landscaping would look like. Thank you very much for considering my proposal.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Alice. Are there any other opponents that wish to speak? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing then. And Brett, would you like to come up and address Alice's concerns?
Brent Beller, 1140 West Center Road. So a couple things. Part of Alice's questions was the zoning in R5. As we sit today, we could go do this project. So we could go and we could build 4 townhomes as long as they comply with all the zoning requirements. We wouldn't be subject to any of the TOD standards as far as design guidelines, certain requirements. So as long as we complied with all that, we could do this today. We don't, we want to build a product that is viable in 2021, which is why you look to the TOD. TOD is there, and actually the City of Omaha's master plan has this planned as TOD, which is why we're here in front of it. So I understand a lot of what she was saying as far as what the plan says, but then the actual map, the master plan map, has this as TOD. And again, it's TOD because there's a major transportation hub right here, and that's the point of the TOD is we want folks to get out of their cars, rely on public transportation. there's probably not a better vacant lot other than the Crossroads development where you're centered around mass public transportation. So that's why we have the TOD, and that's what the master plan calls for. As far as the landscaping, we're not taking out any trees. So I'm on record, Mr. Malley's on record, we're not touching any of those trees. In fact, that's what adds to the greatness of this lot, is how mature those trees are. We're only adding. So the map that she was referencing, this is actually what we're adding. And one of the things I do need to be mindful of is when we submit these plans, and Eric, I might rely on you a little bit, the City of Omaha, we get to this point, but then there's a little bit of vetting that's done as far as Jed and Eric and everyone else looking at these plans to vet out issues about landscaping, making sure we comply with every facet of the City of Omaha's landscaping plans. While we're here today, there's, as you know, before we get to City Council, there's a little bit more vetting of our plans. In fact, we can't go to City Council until we get all that stuff through urban design. But this is what will be added to the site, not necessarily what will be there when we're done. We're not touching any of that mature landscaping. It's going to be there. We have no plans to do that. So I hope I answered most of her questions, but if not, do let me know.
Thank you, Brett. Eric, would you like to address maybe the difference between the R5 and TOD, how that relates to height and some of those issues?
Sure, yeah. As Brent said, the existing R5 zoning would allow up to 4 townhome units within one building. It also requires 3,000 site area per unit. This site is a little over 12,000 square feet. So yeah, theoretically a 4-unit townhome could go in with the existing R5 zoning. And thanks to assist to City Planner Robert here behind me, he did let me know that the site has been, I think it was rezoned in 1986 to 6th residential. We had a zoning conversion in 1987, which would have converted that to the current R5 zoning. So it's been in place. I don't know why it's been vacant for so long. It's kind of surprising. I don't know much about the ownership of the site, but yes, there's you could get 4 townhomes on this site and they could meet the setbacks and comply, or they could seek a waiver from the Zoning Board of Appeals without the benefit of the enhanced TOD requirements, just as was mentioned by the applicant. We completely agree with that assessment. We think the TOD is absolutely the proper zoning for this. The master plan and the zoning code were updated last year following several months of a very lengthy, diligent process to review and implement TOD, which looks at the new orbit, the bus rapid transit line, to maximize that infrastructure that has been put in place, and a lot of money spent towards that. And we want that to be successful. So a lot of effort went into that, and the master plan did recognize this site as well as others nearby as appropriate for some level of TOD. There's different levels. They're not, some that allow high-rise commercial, some that are lower residential density. And what is being proposed is what we absolutely agree with and are supportive of. I do want to mention that, as a result of the TOD, this project has changed a little bit over time in meeting with the applicant. Without getting into too many details, I know there was discussions early on about potentially having driveways directly to Douglas Street on the north. Because of those TOD regulations, that resulted in bringing that access to one driveway point from the west and having a shared driveway, which we as planners think is a great improvement rather than having just curb cut after curb cut and 4 straight driveways aligned. So that is one immediate impact that TOD has already resulted in a change for the better, I think, with this project. So this is a rezoning. I do want to point out that it does not specifically lock down these plans as proposed, but as you heard from the applicant, and he's been put on the record here at Planning Board, and I would expect the same at City Council if this moves forward, that this is essentially what we're proposing to build. And now there might have to be some small minor modifications to meet the TOD codes, or if they have change in the color pattern or something. I mean, there's leeway, but those are reviewed by city staff before any building permits are issued. So I just wanted to point that out. Alice showed an as-built survey that had all those trees. Those are existing trees, and as Brent said, they have no intentions of tearing those down. So any new landscaping will be required by the TOD requirements, which will be reviewed by staff. I think that's all I have to add. As the applicant mentioned, we will go through a thorough review of urban design site plan review before any building permits can be issued for the site, but city staff as well as the master plan does support this rezoning. So I would recommend approval.
Thank you, Eric. Do we have a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Lisa, please record the vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, we already did number 25, so we'll move to case number 26. C11-21-228, C10-21-229, applicants Uptown Properties LLC. The request is for the rezoning from R6 to R7, R6 and R7 to R7 with approval of a PUR planned unit redevelopment overlay district. The location is southeast of 31st and Marcy Streets. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Yeah, Stephen Held on behalf of the applicant, Uptown Properties, 11506 Nicholas Street. We, as you guys are aware, we came to the pre-planning board meeting at 11 o'clock, talked extensively about this project. I think at this time we're requesting a layover to try to work out the issues, the ongoing issues that we have that we obviously aren't going to be able to resolve today. So with that, I guess if there are any opponents and they have questions and they would like us to respond to them, we can do that as well. So we're here, and with that, I'll hand it off to you guys.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Stephen. Are there any other proponents that wish to speak? If not, then I'll take opponents. Any opponents want to speak? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. And Eric?
Yeah, as Stephen mentioned, we did have a lot of dialogue, both city staff and the development team and board members. The recommendation report is for denial, but we are absolutely acceptable to a layover to further discussions. Obviously, we have concerns as staff members of the proposed project, as currently proposed, not being fully compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, and concerns about the massing of the building as well as a large surface parking lot area. So we're acceptable to the layover. Sorry we couldn't move you up to the consent, but we didn't know if there was other parties in the public that wanted to speak. So with that being said, staff would recommend layover.
Okay, we have a motion?
A motion layover.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Lisa, please record the vote.
Yes.
Yes.
I'd just like to maybe make one comment before I vote on this, and that's, the request is for layover now. It was denial. So, Mr. Held, you're going to have to really work with the city so that we're not wasting time, either your time or their time, to get this to work, okay? And so I just want to make that statement, okay? And I'll vote for you. I'll vote for the layover.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks, Stephen. Okay, now we're going to go to case number 29, which was on consent, was taken off. It's number C8-21-231. Gershon McMiller is the applicant. The request is for the approval of special use permit to allow transitional living in the GC district. Location is 701 South 75th Street. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. My name is Zena Miller, and I am the operational manager for Evander's House of Sober Living, LLC.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your first name.
Zena.
I think, thank you.
I come before you today because I've been working on this now for the last, I want to say 5 months maybe, or maybe a little longer. I first came to the planning department. I believe it was in May. The last time that I was here was my 8th time consulting with the planning department. I first met with the planning manager and Mike, and I met, and he went over, we had another building, as a matter of fact, we were looking at, but that building just didn't pan out. So the landlord had another building that became available that was already being used as a transitional living facility. And so he offered that building to me. It was previously the Oxford House. So that was great. We went over, we looked at it, and everything was in place. Nothing had to be done because it was already being used as a transitional living facility. The Oxford House, in doing research on them, they are located like in 50 different states, multiple houses. They do private pay. They do a lot of private pay. We are strictly financed through Nebraska Department of Correction. That's what we have our contract through. I wrote a program that we named HEAL, which is Health Empowerment Alternative Living, which will specifically address a lot of the issues that I feel that the people who are incarcerated when they come out that they're facing. So within that, the way that Evander House will be operated is totally different than any of the other transitional living facilities. We are going to be doing mental health and CD evaluations on our clients as they come through, so we'll see exactly where they are. We do have a mental health therapist that will be working with us to help address family issues, because when people are incarcerated and when they come out, they've been separated from their family. And one of the beliefs that I have is the reason why we have so much gang violence and increase in crime is because a lot of these children's parents are incarcerated. I worked in foster care, and I can tell you that a lot of the guys, the fathers, are in prison. And so I feel that family therapy will be very important, along with group therapy. They've changed the way, Nebraska Department of Corrections has changed the way that they do business. They used to be in the residential communities, which did not work. I was the housing coordinator for a halfway house, and I had 4 houses. And I can tell you that I got complaints all the time. People would just simply make up things just to get our attention to come over. And the way that they were being ran was not correct. There's nothing I could do about that. The only thing I can do is do what my employer tells me to do. But I did see the issues. And with the new program that Nebraska Department of Correction has done, and I totally embrace, is wraparound case management. Wraparound case management means that we individualize each person and what it is that's going on with that individual. My needs are different from your needs. Your needs are different from Mr. Moore's needs. So everybody got a different need. So you just can't come in with a bunch of programming and put it on everybody, because everybody will not need that same thing. So it's going to be more individualized, and along with breathalyzing, because we're a sober living facility, Everyone who comes in will be breathalyzed. I purchased a breathalyzer that is equivalent to what the police department uses. I didn't go to Amazon and buy a $34.95 one. It was almost $600 and it was on sale. But knowing that this is very, very important because a person can be violated if they have a negative breathalyzer. Because anything negative that goes on with the individuals, we have to report to the deprivation officer. And that's a violation and they could go back to jail. So I don't want to ever put anyone in jeopardy of something like that because I was too cheap to buy what was needed for their own protection. We're also going to be doing UAs, and some of them will be random. The one thing that I put in our program was tracking. We are doing extensive tracking. And when I say tracking, I mean that if a person wants to go to Walmart, they will have to go to the case manager, which we will have a case manager on staff. And they would have to ask the case manager permission to go to Walmart. The case manager would then give that permission slip to a monitor because we have 24/7 monitors on staff. Once that person goes to Walmart, they will be allotted a time, say 2 hours to go shopping. Once they get to Walmart, they are going to need to call us, not from their cell phone, but from Walmart's telephone in their customer service department. That way Walmart is going to show up on our caller ID. The same thing when they get ready to leave, they need to go back to customer service, ask to use that phone. Again, we see, and we know how long it's going to take them to say, to get to from 8th and 78th Street where the Walmart is, and we're on 75th and Pacific. So that's not a 2-hour ordeal to get back to the facility. So this is what I'm talking about when I say tracking. Right now, what happens with a lot of the halfway houses and the ones that I manage, they go in and they write on a white dry erase board, I'm going to wherever, and they're gone. They come back, they tip into their rooms, they pretend like they're asleep, but they're drunk. And the housing manager just goes, oh, he's in his bed, he's in his bed, he's in his bed, and he's doing the bed count because they're sitting there pretending to be asleep. But they came in at 8 o'clock, so they beat the curfew. But that's not going to be the way things are handled at Evander's house.
Can I ask you a question?
Certainly.
Your plan sounds really well done. Like I mean, it sounds like you've been in this work and before.
Mm-hmm.
But do you know why this was being laid over?
Yes, and
Okay.
I'm getting to that. I just wanted to give you an overview
Okay.
of what it is that we're doing. Okay. The reason why it's being laid over is because I had gotten a lot of, I don't guess it was misinformation, but a lot of information that was not what I needed to do what I needed to do with. But once I was given when I got with Mr. LaCrosse Casa and Mike, and we all met because after I had paid my money for my special permit, they then looked at it and said, well, you don't have a site plan. Well, I wasn't told I needed a site plan. I had bits and pieces of everything. I come to one person, like I said, that was my 8th time here. I came to one person, they say, okay, you're gonna need a floor plan. Okay, so I go out and I get a floor plan. I went to my landlord and he had some things on file, of course. And then he had a plot survey done. Then I was told that, when the plot survey comes, we'll need that. So I had all these bits and pieces, as what Mike said, and they all need to be put into a site plan. And so it delayed me because they were trying to get me to apply for a group living facility, and that's not what I'm doing. My contract is for level 1, level 2, which is your 3/4 houses, and a halfway house. That's what I am approved for, and I do have the approval from Nebraska Department of Corrections. That's the approval there from them. And then also they told me that I was going to need a special permit also, is what I was going to be needing. And so I have to send them a copy of that because things have changed now. So that is the reason why the layover was, because I did not have a site plan. So I immediately went out. My landlord was out of town. So I went out and I hired an architect myself to get it done. And like I said, he got it done, and I was there in the office on the August the 2nd from 12:50 to 1:27 to present this site plan. Also, there were a few questions that they had. One of them was about the approval. Another one was if would a person be reincarcerated? So all of those questions are easily answered, and I answered them in an addendum to the operational plan. So that is the reason why I'm here today, is ask for an approval for a special permit. We did have one opponent that came forward, and he everything is always based on the Oxford House and the parking problems that they were having with the client was having with them, because he has a business. But I went over and I met with him, and I think that we hit it off pretty good. And I assured him that he would not have those problems with us because we're having a waiver. So none of our clients will have cars. Number one, our clients are coming from the penitentiary. I don't know of a penitentiary that has a prisoner parking lot, nor have I ever seen anyone drive home from the penitentiary in a car that was theirs and they were driving it. So within that, because of economics, and people have to find a job, they have to find housing, and I only have 84 days to work with them to make that happen and transition them into society, that very, very few people ever come up with a car in that short period of time. So I waived that.
So Agnes, can I ask you a question then? You're showing us a site plan here.
Mhm.
Was this submitted to the city?
Yes, yes, it
with
has
the
been
application?
submitted.
Was that, on August 2nd?
Mhm.
Okay, so we didn't have, the staff has to have time to look at it and address it.
Yes, that's what he said.
That's the problem with this public hearing. It's, we don't have that information. We didn't have the information in time to disseminate that to us.
Mhm.
So, I think what I'd like to do is, I think we all admire what you do.
Thank you.
I think it's hard work, and the people really need it, and so
We have a lot of hurting people.
so we don't want to be an obstacle to that, but at the same time, there's certain things we have to do that will make sure that, what you do is helpful for you and good for the community as well. Is there any other testimony that you have?
No, there isn't. I mean, I went through everything as far as I wanted you to understand what we do, because most people don't understand what transitional living is. I mean, you hear it, you see it, but you don't really know what goes on and how it's ran. So I wanted to make sure that you did understand that. And
we appreciate that understanding, the distinction between the different ones, so.
Right,
So
and I do have a packet of stuff here that I want to leave with them again, because there were a few questions that were asked
Okay. So I think what they're gonna have to do is set up another meeting with you,
Okay,
which I think you can do after our hearing is done.
Okay.
And then we can expedite it so that you don't have to keep coming back all the time. We can get you
Thank you, I
moving
appreciate that.
down the road, okay? Well,
All
thank
right,
you,
thank
Agnes.
you.
Any other proponents that wish to speak?
No, my assistant, Ed,
Okay,
I don't know whether he has anything to say or not.
okay.
And, no, I don't have anything else to say.
Okay, so then I'll ask if there are any in opposition, any opponents for this rezoning?
No, I met with
No.
him, and he was fine
Okay.
with what I gave him a copy of my revised operation plan that you guys have, or
Okay.
will have. I gave that to him, and
Great.
he was fine with it. Like I said, his problem was with the Oxford House, and I do understand it, because being a housing coordinator for a halfway house, it, yeah. I
Thank you,
understand.
Agnes.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll,
Stay put for a minute.
I'll close the public hearing then, and then I'll turn it over to Eric.
Yeah, so obviously we want to help you. You know, this is a good service that you're providing, but as the board member said, we do need the site plan now. It seems like you have made very good progress on that. So I want you to coordinate with Mike Carter and Robert LaRocco. They're sitting behind me, and they can even go talk to you a little bit further out in the lobby here. We can get you on the next planning board agenda. We'll need any revised information by next Friday at the latest. So if you have it, that's great. And we can get you back on September. We did have some questions about the operating statement and whether it was group living or transitional living. The challenge is the state of Nebraska has different terms and requirements and licensing than what the city does. And so most people that come through are group living facilities. Now, it seems like you have a much higher level of tracking than what those facilities usually do. So, I mean, it sounds like we can, proceed with the transitional living, but talk to Mike and Robert and get them whatever they need. And let's just stay in communication the next couple of weeks, making sure that we have what we need. There might need a waiver of parking as part of this process, but you did say that the residents do not have vehicles, so that's good. We do have a case next on the agenda that's kind of a similar situation. So, we will recommend layover, but I want you to continue to coordinate with Robert and Mike, okay?
I think that once I give them this information, because on the planning board agenda that they sent, they had on there the things that they had, that were okay.
Yeah, make sure you go through the recommendation report in detail. Perfect. Okay, thank you. Staff recommends layover.
Okay, thank you, Agnes, again. Do we have a motion?
Motion to lay over.
Second.
Lisa, please take the vote.
Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Okay, thank you again, Agnes. Let's move on then to case number 30, C8-21-232, applicant Linda Davis Dorsey. It's on for approval. The request is approval of a special use permit to allow small group living disabled in the R4 district within 600 feet of another small group living facility. The location is 5008 North 60th Avenue. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Linda Davis, and I am here on behalf of New Beginnings Transitional Living Home. The address is 5008 North 60th Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska, 68104. And I am here requesting a special permit, very similar to what Agnes just did. She was applying for a transitional living home, and I am applying for a special permit for a small group living home. So a little bit different. We are also contracted with the state as well. But the difference with the transitional home, and what you said was spot on. The verbiage is different with the state versus the city, which is very confusing to everyone. But we are operating as a small group, 3/4 way home. So we don't have to go through, based off of the information that I gather, we don't have to go through the licensing that a transitional home would. But we provide everything that she had mentioned and then some. So obviously, we see the same type of clients that Agnes's facility sees, women who have either left probation or they're currently on probation or parole. And basically, we offer a temporary home just for that transitional living. We provide case management. We monitor. We have a live-in house manager. We have another staff that is in the house during the day so that we do have 24-hour supervision over the entire house. So I did have a site plan, so I'm hoping everyone actually had a copy of that. So this is just obviously giving you just the dimensions of the outside of the house. But then I was also told that I needed to have a drawing rendition of the inside of the property. So I didn't pay anyone to do this. I just drew it out myself. I am an artist. Just kidding. But anyway, it's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house. With small group living, obviously we can have up to 6 individuals, well, total of 8 people total, but we can house 6 women, and then we have a live-in house manager. So we cannot go over that amount. I believe you guys have a copy of the operation agreement or operation statement. The women are not allowed to have a vehicle on the premises. That keeps us within the guidelines of the small group living. So I think that's about it. So I am requesting the recommendation for a small group living permit. Questions?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Do we have any other proponents that would wish to speak? Do we have any opponents that wish to speak? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Yeah, I don't know. Eric?
Just to confirm, if somebody pulled it off the consent, they must no longer be here, or they got their questions answered appropriately. So, we do have a recommendation report for approval. Not uncommon, we do have a parking waiver that would be required, the zoning code. Unfortunately, it can't count driveways to count as your required parking, so we do have a garage that provides one stall. We are supportive of the waiver, so that's a little step in the process that we can assist the applicant with in getting that waiver as this proceeds to City Council. So we can continue to work with you on getting that next.
So I don't think a waiver is going to be required because the women are not allowed to have vehicles.
Well, so that's your supporting justification for the waiver, but the zoning code that we have requires a waiver.
Oh.
Either you have the parking or you need a waiver, but we support the waiver.
Okay.
It should be a fairly simple matter, but we're going to have to assist you with getting that application in, and we can work with you on that. So it's another public hearing and board, but because you have the city's support, it's usually very straightforward.
Okay.
So we'll follow up with you on that. But yeah, we'll want to get that on the next Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. That's about it. There was just one small clarification of the operating statement that we need that we can work with Linda as well. So staff recommends approval of the special use permit to allow small group living to say, oh, one more thing.
Yeah.
Sorry. This is usually a permitted use, but because it is within a certain distance of another facility is the reason that we're here, and I mentioned that in the pre-meeting. Approval of the special use permit to allow small group living disabled in the R435 district subject to the 4 conditions in the report.
Thank you, Eric. Do we have a motion?
I move approval of the special use permit to allow small group living disabled in the R435 district, subject to the 4 conditions outlined in the report.
Second.
Lisa, please record the vote.
Moore,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
motion approved.
Before we move on, you folks back here have been sitting here for a long time. Were you Did you have a specific case that you were, yeah?
32 on 5815 South 86 Circle.
That got approved.
Oh, I'm sure that was on consent agenda. Consent agenda has already been approved, I believe.
Yeah, it was approved.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it was on the consent agenda. I think you came in after that.
I got a notice from the city that said that I was supposed to be here at 1:30.
Could you come forward?
Sure. I got a.
Should we do our closings?
What's that?
Should we do our closings or you want to talk in first?
Let me talk, no.
I'm Herb Grothy from, my address is 13207 Polk Street. I represent Bellevue Cabinets, which I own. I want to show you what I
Okay,
have.
we know who you are. You were here previously when we saw this before, isn't that correct? The Bellevue Cabinets?
Bellevue.
Yeah,
it's the first-
you're down by the Ponca Healthcare?
Correct.
Okay.
So unfortunately, this was already voted on the consent agenda, so we can't take public testimony, but it will proceed to city council. We will send, the city clerk's office will send notifications
Right.
when it is on that.
So we've already taken the action that we can take here, and we can't bring it back. But you can go to the city council when this goes to city council.
Well, I understand, the way I read it is that what they want to do is zone all these 7 parcels together to one, and in one area.
Staff, we can talk to you here offline and try to answer your questions about it.
I mean, I'm right here, this is where
Yeah.
I'm at, and they wanted to
Yeah, they can speak with you.
And they want to have a different part on one side of the street, on the other side of the street, a use permit, and I just
Gotcha.
can't. That's what I was against.
Okay, well, they can speak with you right after we finish here. So, we need to approve the minutes of the pre-meeting from July.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Second.
Okay, Lisa, take a vote, please.
Abstain.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. We need a motion on the minutes, approval of the minutes from the July meeting, from the regular meeting.
Motion to approve minutes of July meeting?
Second.
Lisa, take a vote, please.
Morris,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Pate,
Abstain.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
motion approved.
Motion.
Motion to adjourn? Second.
Take the vote.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
motion approved.
Motion adjourned. Meeting adjourned. You need to get time to eat.
Gosh darn it.